Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome inside the Roll Jays podcast. I'm Jimmy Allen. That's Alex Drake, Casey Matthews. We're joined today by Creighton assistant coach Trey Zeigler, who joins us for the second time from a hotel room out in beautiful California. Trey, I don't know who you need to talk to. Maybe it's Mac, but you're not supposed to go out to the West Coast till it gets cold outside, man.
Hey, unfortunately, recruiting doesn't work that way. We got. I wish it worked like that.
You've obviously been on the trail since you got to Omaha and came back to Creighton. What has the response been like from recruits about this Jays program, Coach McDermott, and getting the opportunity to possibly come to Omaha?
Well, I think right now, the success we've had the last 5 years, it's easy to everybody sees us as becoming a national brand. And, it's made recruiting a lot easier. We're able to get in rooms we necessarily haven't been able to get into probably 10 years ago. So from that aspect, our style of basketball, the culture, it speaks for itself. And we've been able to capitalize a little bit here down the last few years because of it.
Well, Trey, we've talked before. Obviously, people know you've been here, left, came back, and so your story's pretty neat. I don't think we've ever asked you really though, and I'm gonna ask you to leave your dad out of this unless you really want to just get into that. But talk to us more about you in terms of who were your biggest coaching influences, mentors, and how did they help my who you are as a coach a little bit? Just want to get to know you more in that regard.
I definitely have, my dad, of course, is a huge influence on everything. It's who I learned the game from. But when I look outside of my dad, my AAU coach here in LA, Ron Mason, I think he played a huge part in me being like a player coach. It was my first experience where it was a guy that just kind of lets you be yourself and let your game come out. And I actually, last time I was out here, I took him out to brunch and told him hey, I owe a lot of my basketball success to you because you were the first coach that I didn't feel like I had to look over my shoulder. So just from that aspect, just taking bits and pieces, my high school coach, Sam Taylor, the discipline that he instilled in me during high school. And then when you get to college, of course, I played for my dad, but then, I got to play from Jamie Dixon, who's a great defensive, coach. And then Trent Johnson, of course, who also comes from a defensive mindset. But I would say, honestly, Trent and Mac and Huss, the guys I worked for, learning from Mac that first year, his offensive mind and just he's a genius. I was actually just sitting with some guys last night and I'm telling them he's a genius. He can go from on to off so quick. And even Huss, Huss really works at it and is so smart. But I remember one of our first meetings, he told us as a staff, he said, I just worked for a guy that was a genius. None of you guys are geniuses. So that means we're going to work our butts off. So just those guys, man. And I've been able to pick and take pieces from each. What I like, Huss's work ethic has definitely rubbed off on me. Just so I've been able to pick from all these different great coaches I've been able to be around.
Trey, we talked about this a little bit last time we had you on, but now you've kind of, been with the program again for a little bit. How much was your experience with Huss? How much has that translated to what you're doing now at Creighton? How has it helped you so much faster?
Definitely, Huss entrusted me with a lot from the player development standpoint. And then on top of recruiting, I got to be on the road. I signed my first recruit there. So just being out on the trail already, all the how to get around, do things that experience was invaluable for me. Now stepping into, recruiting at the level that we are. So just that alone, I think him leaning on me and being able to sign a player year one as we got in there. So that experience, and of course, just the voice I was able to gain in practice, running drills and things like that, where I was kind of always the secondary guy at Creighton, and I was running my own stuff, and that was, while all the other coaches were there. Even the stretch we went to the CBI that week before we practiced, I ran the whole deal. So it just he entrusted me with a lot and set me up to kind of run into this, from the ground running here at Creighton.
It's obviously different for every single coach, but how different or difficult is it for you to go from being obviously playing for your dad to playing for a legendary college coach to being a coach yourself and jumping from one staff to another from a terminology standpoint and just kind of being able to take things that you learned at spot A and make it portable to spot B?
Yeah, the language is definitely different everywhere. So for me, it's, basketball is universal, but I think even my experience internationally helped a lot because not a lot of times you have all your teammates that speak English. So just being able to speak the game, and I'm really big on, we were talking about this in the meeting the other day, like explaining why. I think a lot of guys don't understand why they do things. And especially younger guys, like they just do the movement or they just follow the next guy in line because they've been able to do that their whole life and get by. But without understanding why we do this or why we do that kind of cut, what does it mean to logo cut and what that opens up a double gap? Like if someone doesn't explain it, you're just doing it to do it. And
all right, which freshman's not getting it? Just tell us. No.
Trey, did you get that because you played for coaches that wouldn't explain why, or with the opposite?
I'll say two experiences for me. One as a GA, we had a kid. I'm not gonna put him on, but we had one of our top guys who really struggled understanding why we did what we did. And at the time as a GA, I would just kind of, resort to, hey, just do this, it'll work. But he never understood why we were playing the way we were coming, how his shots were going to come, how he was going to fit in. And to this day, I feel like I did a disservice because I probably, if I would have took the time to understand that's what he needed, it would have been better. And I had a similar situation at High Point where we had a kid who we inherited from the previous staff who wanted to learn how to play really badly, but had no idea where to even start. Like he didn't understand none of the terminology and things. So when I started to break it to him, like, this is why, this is the points per possession. This is why this makes sense, why this makes sense. Like a light bulb just connected differently than just like explaining it to him. And now that I've seen that, I just think it's so important. If you got guys that really want it, but they don't understand why they're doing things. They're just doing them to do them. And I think that's, our next step.
But can I ask you this though? Because I mean, as someone who was in the profession, like I think I could make an argument that you can't do that all the time.
No.
Because regardless, and I know who you're referring to, he wasn't gonna get it. So like, and I'm just keeping it real. So
but you got to give him a chance. He might not have.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, at some point in time, you run out of chances.
That's true.
So I mean, that's just life. So and now as a father, and Jimmy can relate. You guys can't yet. Some will sooner than others. But you're hopefully your kids are going to ask you questions, right? And you're going to give instructions to your children, and they're going to ask you why.
Right.
And there's times where you can't explain why. It's just do it because I told you to do it.
There's a lot of truth in
that. And I think that can be the same in hoops. Like sometimes you just have to do it because you chose to come here. One of my coaches I worked with a long time ago, seriously, I was at Southern Miss, and he would walk around the gym because they played for we had a tough head coach, brutal. I've told you stories, Trey. Brutal to work for, brutal to play for. And this coach, I'll tell you, his name is Jareem, that the coach that I'm not the head coach. He would walk around the guys would be complaining. He would walk around and go, "Hey, you said you wanted to be one. You said you wanted to be one." This is about being a college basketball player. It takes what it takes, like Nick Saban said, right? So I think that I get it because you're kind of getting to the question I want to ask you of I get it. So you got to explain why, but at some point you got to go, look, man, I've tried to explain why. You're not getting it. Just do it because I'm telling you to do it.
And that's the point of where, when coaches when I'm not talking to you anymore, that means I'm done with you. Then you get to that point,
100%. I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, maybe try, but then if it doesn't work, you got to pivot. But But like, I think that's part of what I wanted to ask you was like, ever since we met, we've talked about this before. We shared an office together, and it was the greatest. I think you're on record as saying it's the greatest year of your life.
I believe so too. It's on video somewhere.
Yeah, you are very, very genuine. Always got that from you. But what is your approach to building relationships with players? But also, you have been getting some accolades lately for your relationships with AAU coaches, other college coaches for transfers. I've heard heard your name a lot in that regard. What are you doing? Like, how are you building those relationships and establishing yourself as somebody that can recruit?
Well, you know what? I would say a lot of it is just putting yourself back out there, because I played, a lot of coaches that I recruited me are still coaching. So like, it's funny, like my first summer last year at High Point, like people just seeing you out on the road, they're like, oh, you're like, they don't know just because I'm at High Point, the rest of the country doesn't care about that. So like, seeing, old faces, like I'm running into Tom Izzo, who recruited me a lot. I'm running into, a lot of different coaches, and just, I think it refreshes everybody that you're in the business. And that what's that done for me is people that I used to talk to regularly when I was younger now call me, and like scouting service guys, have, all those kind of people are now reaching out to me, and I'm able to bridge that gap that when I was playing and I was on the high school circuit, that, some of those people that ran that, now I'm back, talking to them on a daily basis. And so it's just refreshing a lot of old connections I had. And then from that front, I'm not afraid to call anybody. I'll dry call, I'll do whatever. And that was kind of what I did at High Point. I think the one tool that I use a lot is social media. I think these kids are enamored with social media. And so like, I try to make my Instagram show that, I played or whatever it is, or how it comes off. And so from that, I just use that as a tool. I go right to, the follow to, if it's a kid that we want, like I'd go right into, and I'd go directly to the kid, go directly to the source. And from the source will tell you who's going to be involved, who are the players, and you just work it from there.
Do you have an appreciation, and I don't even know if you really can, because obviously you played in a completely different era, for how much easier social media and that direct contact makes your job?
So much easier. I remember the biggest thing when I was playing was mail outs. You would get these mail outs from all these schools. It would be questionnaires, or it would be, you'll be lucky enough to get a handwritten one. So like, we didn't have where they could just go on our social media and start conversations. Matter of fact, my era was probably the last year. They couldn't text us. It was a violation of text. So it was.
We had VHS to make our highlight tapes.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then they had to email you. You could email unlimited at that time, but you couldn't text.
Do you have an appreciation though for like how much the kid or the recruit themselves is now available to people, and is it hard for you to have to be able to throttle back and throttle forward with communication?
Yeah, it's almost too accessible, because there's like, it's unlimited text. And I don't like to overwhelm kids. So you can kind of fill a kid out, based off the energy they're giving back. But I think it is too much. I think the unlimited visits is probably too much too. Kids are kind of taking advantage of that right now, just to get out of school or get out of town, when they're not even serious about places. Like ours was, you had 5 visits. So whoever you were visiting, you were serious about, because you only had 5 of them. Whereas these kids, they can go to every school one time, and they got 2 years to do it. So, you see a kid that's somewhere every weekend, like, is there value there? I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah. Trey, last time we had you on, we talked about your experience working with Trey Alexander and really improving his shot selection and percentages in a specific year, and how you were going to try and translate that to a guy like Jemiah Neal, who we all agree can improve immensely. And that was part of your guys' recruiting pitch to him. How has he taken that coaching so far, and not just him, but the team in general, as we continue to try and prove, losing 2 NBA guys in Trey Alexander and Baylor Shireman?
Yes, absolutely. It's big shoes to fill. I think Jemiah is extremely talented, and Bob, and so just getting them. I mean, the most important thing for them is because they are older guys that have done things a certain way for 2-3 years. Um, it is like reprogramming them, right? So is watching a lot of film like earlier this week, I had Pop in film. We watched film for an hour and a half, just like showing him the version of himself at Texas Tech and then showing him his practice clips and like how can those two things bridge across where you feel comfortable and you're still playing our style of basketball, and he's all about it. I think him and Jemiah have accepted and are willing to be coached, and I did it the same with Jemiah this summer. I think we watched 350 of his clips at Arizona State, and just good shot, bad shot. Jemiah is a guy who shot. People don't know this, but they look at his shooting precision. He shot 50% on catch and shoot threes last year. He was 18% at shooting step back three. So how do we balance that? Let's get rid of that one.
One of those numbers is higher than the other.
Significantly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and he's a kid. I would say the other thing that helps, they're extremely intelligent, both of them.
We're catching up with Creighton assistant coach Trey Zeigler here on the Roll Jays podcast. Just a reminder, if you want to be able to benefit your favorite athlete at Creighton, you could scan the barcode in the top right corner to benefit the Birdcage, the NIL collective for Creighton University. All donations will go to your favorite athletes at Creighton, as well as help this podcast out as well. So if you like the content we put out and you want to donate to the NIL collective for the Jays, please scan the barcode in your top right corner, and all donations will go to the Birdcage. Trey, obviously, you mentioned a couple of guys that are going to be new faces, but you get a lot of familiar faces back from a year ago. You guys are just a few weeks into practice. What has the vibe been around practice been like, and does it kind of feel like the gel is starting to glue a little bit?
For sure. I think the chemistry is growing. I think it started really with Kalk's wedding, just that environment and all the guys being there. I think that was huge. Just seeing all the guys be there and support him. And then from there, we've had a great fall. I think guys have continued to take strides. I think Isaac Trout and Jason Green went into practice with having the best summer and springs probably of their lives. And then, we start here, and I think Kalk and Steven have done the ultimate job as leaders, as captains. Their voices have been impactful. When I was a GA, Kalk wasn't very verbal, but he's went out of his way here these first 2 weeks to be the leader. And I think just that alone, he's taken huge leaps.
What do you think so far when, if you had to give me a surprise that I won't say you weren't expecting because you won't say that, but maybe something that you're a little bit surprised to see so far?
Probably our depth. I think our depth, Ty Davis has been great. Sterling Knox has been great so far, and just seeing that we're going to be a little deeper than we thought. So we got guys that are showing that they're capable right now.
How do you think you balance that though with obviously, yeah, you're deep, but I think in this day and age, especially when you have Ryan Kalkbrenner who is coming back for another year and has been so dominant. You have a Stephen Ashworth, same thing. You got Pop that transferred here to win. How do you balance development with some of those guys that haven't seen minutes and take advantage of some of the depth, but also understand even if there's depth, you're a starter for a reason, and you come off the bench for a reason. So how do you balance that? Because I think a lot of times we've had depth, but it's meaningless if you don't play them.
Right.
And I think NAC is so good at getting the most out of the guys to where you had Ryan Kalkbrenner play 40 minutes in some situations. I guess how do you weigh that?
Yeah, I think it will be an interesting dynamic from that standpoint. The fours we got, you might see some small ball. You might see some Jason Green at the 5. You might see, a line of Mason Miller has been playing a lot of 3 here earlier, just so we have that dynamic to be flexible in lineups. And then I think for the most point, we still got 2 or 3 weeks of practice for guys to define roles. I think, and that will play a big part in how we start out here. And, the sucky part for those young guys, they don't have that long to figure it out. We're playing not to talk down on our first 3 or 4 games, but we got our bye games, and then we're in it. You got Nebraska, and it just rolls all the way through to conference play. So it's not going to be a lot of time to figure it out for those guys. So it's going to be really important here these next 2 or 3 weeks how much they can accumulate as far as plays and how we play and continue to play well while learning.
Coach, how is that 4th spot coming along? And this is the second year in a row where that is a big conversation about the amount of bodies you have there that can all contribute.
I mean, I'll tell you how it's coming along. It's very talented. I mean, every day you could argue a different guy. It's that close of a race there at that spot. Mason's, of course, still getting back healthy. But, I mean, he's had big moments for us in the past starting. So then you got Jason Green, like I said, has had probably the best spring and summer. I mean, he's a different kid than I left here as a GA, and that's for sure. And then Jackson has come along here in these last 2 weeks. He's playing well, and Isaac Trout probably is our best wide open catch and shoot guy. It's probably 80% when he's wide open. So I mean, you got 4 guys that are extremely talented, and we got to find a way to maneuver those guys around and see, like I said, Mason at the 3, is it Jason Green at the 5, maybe Isaac in moments match up, you play him at the 5. So it's going to get interesting. And I think it might be game to game, honestly, matchup to matchup.
It's a little bit different. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Case.
No, I was just wondering, how does Fedor factor into that? Because if he gets eligible, it changes the entire dynamic.
Am I allowed to talk about Fedor? I don't know if I don't.
I mean, we're saying if.
Okay.
Let's say hypothetically, there's an overseas player that may be available. Does it change anything?
I mean, he's on the roster. It's not like he's a recruit.
I don't know the rule. Honestly, I don't know this rule. So
it's on you to know the rules, dude. So we're not taking any responsibility.
You can pass here if you want to.
It's all hypothetical.
I'm pass. I mean, Fedor is extremely talented, and we hope to have him. And if he's in the picture, he changes things rotation-wise for sure. Of course, his experience alone, and then, he's impactful. His ability to really move and shoot is something we don't necessarily have with Baylor leaving, and I think he's probably the best at it. So off the move, and I think he's above average athlete like Baylor was as well. Like he can play above the rim, he can make plays off the dribble. So of course we would love the addition, but until the NCAA rules, we really don't. We got to plan ahead as if
right.
We don't know.
We're catching up with Creighton assistant coach Trey Zeigler here on the Roll Jays podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing inside the Pyramid Contractor Studio. Trey, for you personally, obviously things are a little bit different. Jalen Courtney Williams now at LSU, you stepping into that role. Derek Kellogg has been inserted into this rotation since you've been gone. What has it been like for you from a camaraderie standpoint with this coaching staff?
Well, it was like coming back home. Of course, only Casey was,
obviously there's some improvements. Yeah.
We upgraded there. We got Lucas Vargas, so that was good, No, I'm kidding. But we, it's family. And I walked right back in, and it felt like I was at home. Guys like Jeff Vanderloo, Steve Murfield, Jeremy, like all these guys I had all these relationships with, and just being back in the fold. And, of course, Ryan Miller, and then getting to know DK. DK is a heck of a ball coach.
He's a dude.
Yeah, he really is. And they've made that transition easy for me coming to this level because they've kind of let me do my thing and kind of guided me along the way here this summer. So it's been great.
We know you got to run, so we'll kind of get you out of here on this, and we ask all the assistant coaches this question. We gave you a little bit of pass last time you were on because it was your first time, but everybody claims to be a grill master on the coaching staff at Creighton. If you're throwing something on the grill to cook, what's your specialty?
I'm gonna tell you what. This is gonna sound bad, but I don't grill.
Okay. Hey, you're the first person that hasn't laid steak to claim to something though, so maybe that's a little honorable.
I
knew Casey was gonna shake his head at that. But
it's embarrassing. It just embarrasses me that we're such good friends and you don't grill
you have to take into account. This is probably my third year living in the States since being out of college.
Good point. That's fair.
How is that?
Are they not allowed to grill in Europe? I'm confused.
It's kind of an Americanized thing. I'll give him that.
Exactly. It's not just grills outside. It's not.
Hey, when you get back from California, come over to the house. We'll do grilling 101.
I live around the corner from Casey. We can give you some pointers.
Casey, I need you to come out to my house and fire up my smoker. Teach me how to do a brisket.
We'll do a Roll Jays pod live from the
Roll Jays pod, the Roll Jays barbecue. Roll Jays barbecue. Yeah, it sounds like a great point. Hey,
sounds
Trey,
like a great fundraiser for the birdcage.
Sure does. And again, just for anybody that missed the barcode last time, it's up there. The scan the code and make it.
Sounds like I need to get a bigger house if I'm going to do that.
I know a guy.
Yeah, make a donation to the Birdcage today to help your favorite student athletes and the NIL collective at Creighton. Trey, we appreciate you joining this podcast. We're 3 out of the 4 people that join it know that you're supposed to wear Creighton gear while doing it. But we will catch up with you down the road, Coach. Good luck this season.
All right, appreciate it, guys. Always good talking to you guys.
Thanks for joining us here on the Roll Jays podcast. We'll be back next Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. We'll see you next week.